Hi everyone, and welcome to this IMechE Talking Together interview with Stephen Metcalfe, MP for South Basildon and East Thurrock, and the current chair of the Parliamentary and Scientific Committee. It's fantastic to be here today at One Birdcage Walk, where we will be exploring why engineering is an exciting career to go into, and why we should all be motivated about the prospects of engineering and technology in the UK. It is a pleasure to interview Stephen around these topics, as he is a long-standing advocate for science and technology in Parliament.
So, Stephen, thank you very much for your time today and for coming over to the IMechE and for taking part in the Talking Together series.
My absolute pleasure. I'm delighted to have been invited to come and talk to you both.
First question is, you're an MP, your job is pretty exciting and challenging, representing so many people. What's your average day like?
So I often describe my role as a Member of Parliament. It has three particular parts. There is the part that I do in Westminster, which is asking questions, taking part in debates, interacting with ministers, representing my constituency as a whole to government and to the Houses of Parliament. The second part of it is dealing with people on an individual basis, helping them with a whole range of issues. And that can be anything from my neighbours parking outside my house, to my rubbish hasn't been collected, all the way through to I'm being denied access to innovative medical treatment. And we try and help people on an individual basis to do that. And then the third part of the job, which is probably the most interesting and diverse, is that I am a community representative. I get into every part of my community. So that could be helping year one and reception students in a primary school do some reading, through to visiting a charity, going to talk to an important local business, going to the top. We've got a big logistics port down in my constituency, going to the top of the tower crane. All those things to, if you like, create the links between the various parts of the constituency.
One of the things we've seen over the last few years is the uncertainty in politics, and that also is something that happens in a career, especially as a young developing engineer. So how do you deal with uncertainty in your job?
Do the best you possibly can. Have confidence and faith in yourself, as long as you are doing the best you can and you're doing everything you can to remove as much uncertainty as possible. And in my case, that would be getting out and talking to my constituents, and just accepting that there are things that are beyond your control, that actually I can't control the performance of the government every day. I try to influence them, but I can't control it. I can't control the outcome of the next general election. What I can do is put myself forward and say, I have served you, here is my record, and I'd like the opportunity to continue doing that. And if they choose to pick someone else, then so be it. I have to accept that and move on and do something else.
So you joined Parliament in 2010, you were elected about 13 years ago now. It's quite a long time. You've
Yes.
sat on a range of different committees, you know, the Parliamentary and Scientific Committee, the Science and Technology Select Committee. Have you seen a shift in that 13 years towards engineering as a topic in the UK and how we're approaching it?
Back in 2018, I was fortunate enough to have been the government's envoy for the Year of Engineering, and that was great because I got to go all around the country promoting engineering, telling people from every background, every gender, every ethnicity that there was a place for them in engineering, and then trying to show them where that place was. And we had some successes with that. We were trying to promote engineering, and I think part of the problem is that the wider public don't really understand what engineering is in the modern world. They tend to have a residual image of someone with a high-vis jacket and a hard hat and perhaps a tool belt and dirty, whereas an awful lot of engineering now is digital, is in the virtual space, and of course that has exploded over the last 13 years. I also chair, as well as the Parliamentary and Scientific Committee and the Science and Technology Select Committee, I chair the all-party group on artificial intelligence, which I started back in 2016 with a colleague in the House of Lords, because it was beginning to, the phrases, the words were all flying around Parliament. No one really knew what any of it meant. And we decided to set up this group to try and get ahead of the curve to help parliamentarians understand what it means. And I think we've done quite a good job of that over the last 6-7 years. But it is far more mainstream now.
So as an MP, you've been a great advocate for science and technology in Parliament, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
What makes you so passionate and motivated to keep this?
It is new technology, it is new discoveries that are going to make us live healthier, longer lives. It is going to tackle some of the global huge global problems we have in terms of a growing population. How do we feed them? How do we provide them with enough water and waste, sanitation? How are we going to mitigate against the impacts of climate change? All these will come through the sciences. And what isn't there to like about being involved and promoting those and helping particularly young people? I love getting into schools and talking about my passion for science with them, to get them excited about how they individually, by pursuing a career or an interest in science, can change the world.
We've had the coronavirus pandemic, but we also have a sort of climate change pandemic.
Absolutely.
And net zero is now very, very high on the agenda. And IMechE past president Peter Flynn said that achieving net zero is arguably one of the greatest challenges the human race has got to achieve. How do we implement a net zero plan that works for the whole country? And why is this a challenge and an exciting opportunity for people embarking in engineering?
I think we already have the technology to reduce the amount of carbon as a planet we produce. There's no point in holding out for new technologies to come along and become some great saviour. What we've now got to do is scale up and roll out at speed to do this. And that, of course, again, is where, so the scientists have given us the tools, they've told us how we do this, and now the scientists, together with the engineers, are going to be scaling up that technology. Now, last Thursday, I was very fortunate. I was invited down to Hinkley Point in Somerset. Blown away by the experience. I mean, it's the largest building site in Europe. It is absolutely vast. There's 9,000 people on site, creating a new, it'll be 2 nuclear reactors producing about 3.4 gigawatts of electricity, which will act as our base load, and that will operate carbon-free. Now, I'm not pretending it's carbon-free to build, but going forward, it is going to reduce our dependency on carbon. Now, what we've got to do is help roll that out and build it across the rest of the planet and help them do the same.
So yeah, I think on that note, there's a really great talk we had for the IMechE's 175th anniversary from Sir Patrick Vallance. Fantastic discussion that we had here at One Birdcage Walk. I think COVID, we talk about COVID a lot, but it is a watershed moment for the humanity of this, of the globe. The one thing that struck a lot of us was how Sir Patrick Vallance, Professor Chris Whitty were right at the forefront of everything, advising ministers, giving MPs advice, advising the Prime Minister. That's a medical pandemic, that's a crisis in its own right, but climate change is also a crisis.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to understand, do you think there's a role for a chief engineer, a similar type of role of Professor Chris Whitty, in which they can advise the government around net zero and climate change?
How can we use engineering? Because engineering is a pulling together of sciences. It's more, yes, we talk about it in its own right, but it is all the other disciplines brought together, and how we can tackle some of those big problems. Yes, so the pandemic, there was an engineering aspect to that. Of course there was. And how do you roll out, how do you manufacture and get into people's arms 30 million vaccines in very short order and then come round again and again and again to make sure that we get on top of this? The engineers will play a huge part in that. And so I think, while I believe that engineering is used across government and respected and listened to, having the named person, I think, gives it the credibility and status that it needs to help encourage others to see it as something where they can play a role. So that is why I would promote it. I don't think the government haven't got engineering advice. I just think having a chief engineer would give it the value it needs.
Yeah, in terms of, if you look at Professor Chris Whitty, for example, he's actually a practicing doctor at the time and still is now. Having a practicing engineer may be slightly better to inform around engineering applications, the current state of play. It's just that day to day, if someone's an engineer by their day job, they maybe just have a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And that's something that, we find quite interesting.
And also in terms of getting engineering out there as a career that's not just in a hard hat, because I imagine there'll be a lot more people who've suddenly gone, Sir Patrick Vallance, maybe I should consider science as a career.
I think you're absolutely right, yes.
About education at the moment is very exam heavy, and STEM obviously are challenging subjects, and when you make them very exam heavy, it can really ruin people's lives a little bit when they're very, very stressed and they're worried that it's going to impact their future. So you don't want to deter people from a career in engineering because of that. Do you think we should be looking at different ways of delivering STEM subjects within education?
I agree. We do need to look at ways of assessing people's competencies. The problem at the moment is exams seem to be the best way of doing that. But whether there are better ways for particularly the sciences and engineering more widely, I would hope yes. But the times that I have discussed changing the way we deliver education, I don't get a general sense that there is an appetite to change the system.
And from a mental health and wellbeing perspective, you're doing those exams. I remember A-levels being particularly both technically difficult, so you're stressed. You don't necessarily have the capabilities to deal with those stresses at that point in your life, and you're trying to explore social life, understand what's the next steps, all these stresses about I've got to move away to another city to take on further studies. I saw many friends that struggle with that. At times I struggled with what should I be prioritising. And but in the world of work, you have more support and it's different. So there's this disparity I find.
Yes.
And I'm sure my team's got similar.
But there's also a lot of collaboration. So I studied engineering at university and it was at Cambridge. So there's a lot of exams. It's very exam heavy, but there still is a lot of collaborative and project work, which you're assessed on.
Yes.
And why can't you do that a little bit more at schools?
Yeah.
Because you could at GCSE and design and technology level, you have exams, but you also have to make something.
Yes. You mentioned design and technology. I'd like to make it design, engineering and technology. Just to put that engineering in there. I know it's already in the curriculum to an extent, but let's give it the prominence that it deserves.
Yes. Yeah.
And that brings me on to one of my passions is applied learning. So through the IMechE, we have a range of different STEM outreach, and we take, for example, drones. Let's teach children maths through a digital application, which is also fun. And the Big Bang Fair, I've been before. What a great success that is, seeing children, looking at applications of technology. So maths isn't boring anymore because you're applying it to something that's actually pretty cool and is great fun to use. So it's a powerful way to inspire people. You're a director of the board that organises that fair. I suppose the question from us is there any plans to expand that, make it a bigger event? Could you start implementing it more into schools as a pilot?
Well, yes, absolutely. And it's already more than a pilot. So we do have, let's go backtrack. So we've got the Big Bang Fair, normally in Birmingham. Pre-pandemic, we were getting 70, 80,000 children, young people, through the door over 3 or 4 days, and then parents at the weekend. Fantastic. A whole range of companies who rely on science promoting their sector, and of course the learned institutes such as yourselves. It was absolutely fantastic, and the buzz around the place was fabulous. It has been scaled back slightly at the moment, post-pandemic, but we've got plans for this year. It's going ahead, slightly more targeted. But because of that change in the way we deliver it, we've also created Big Bang Digital, which is a digital delivery platform, and that goes out into schools, particularly out into schools, and they sign up for the week and have various interactive sessions that they can take part in.
We know about STEM, but the acronym STEAM has been introduced as a movement to try and integrate the arts and humanities into traditional STEM subjects. So in my personal example, at A-level, I did maths, physics, chemistry, and also history, because I really liked history, I enjoyed it, and it provided a lot of balance from the very intense STEM subjects. And then I did history for fun. It was also a completely different gender balance. The STEM was all males and myself, and then history was all females. So it was quite nice. But not everyone is so lucky in school. Sometimes you're forced to pick. If you do STEM, there's no chance of you doing humanities. So do you think there should be more support to schools and colleges to try and couple the two?
I wanted to do art, technical drawing, and maths. May not think of those as the most academic of subjects, but I had a clear idea of what I wanted to do, which actually was to use computers to create animation and graphics. And I'm talking about in the early 80s, 82. So the subject didn't exist, but I had been fortunate. I'd had access to what was then a ZX Spectrum ZX80 computer, 4K, whole 4K of memory. But I was programming this at home in the bedroom, and then I persuaded my parents to buy a computer to run their business, and I was programming that, and I could see how you could create or be creative using technology, and that's what I wanted to do. But of course, my sixth form college, the curriculum was split so rigidly that you could either do arts or you could do sciences. So I ended up doing maths, biology, and politics and economics. It's their fault that I'm here, because that's the science. So that was that side of the curriculum. As it happens, I then went into the printing industry and used computers to be creative with. So I absolutely understand that you can't be an engineer without being creative. Problem solving is a creative process.
I couldn't do certain subjects I wanted to do because the timetable was so binary, and that it's, if you do maths, you can't do English and you can't do these art subjects. But when I did choose history, my report writing, it's such an amazing skill to have. Because most of the things you do in engineering, you're gonna have to write a report to communicate and obviously store that knowledge, information, and data.
And that is
vital skills.
Vital.
Absolutely. So one thing that's a massive topic in society and also in corporate businesses is how we deal with mental health and wellbeing. Something the IMechE is very aware of, and this series is about that, talking about this topic. Personally, 7 years within industry, I've seen a massive shift in the landscape. Only recently, lots of communications around, living better, thinking about looking after your mental health and wellbeing. I suppose retaining talent, being our best, you have to be both good in a physical sense and mental health and wellbeing perspective. So where do you think government can help to further progress that approach to mental health and wellbeing, not just in the workplace, but it starts at education as well?
Mental health is an issue. It's an issue that we all suffer from time to time, and we should be open about it. And I think the government has helped do that and provide the focus. We've had debates in Parliament over recent years where people have opened up about some of their own mental health challenges. Now, 10 years ago, that would never have happened. So, and I think that is important, that we all need to be able to say to each other, I am not feeling right. I'm down, I need support, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And depending on the sector that you are in, I think historically that has been more difficult to do, because you've got to be a roughy tufty, tough it out. This is a robust environment. Actually, you can still be robust, but need some support from time to time. And so I hope that what has happened over the last few years is that there is a greater acceptance that this is a subject that we can talk about without being judged about. Now that will take some time to filter across the whole landscape, but if it's happening, that has to be a good thing. And the way we can all help do that, certainly those in senior roles perhaps, is be honest with those who are subordinate to us or junior. That if I say I have had mental health issues, which I have over the years, then that should give you and others the confidence to also say that. And by doing that, I'm opening up the debate, because I'm, in a way, exposing myself to displaying a weakness. But we all have it, and we shouldn't deny it. What we need to do is embrace it and work and support each other to tackle it.
Thanks everyone for watching, and if you really found the interview insightful, please be sure to check out the IMechE Talking Together resources on the IMechE website.